Isis was the patroness of the magical arts among the Egyptians. The use to which magic should be put is revealed in the Osirian cycle, where Isis applies the most potent of her charms and invocations to accomplish the resurrection of Osiris. In other words, the redemption of the human soul. That the gods of Egypt were elements of a profound magical system and possessed a significance far different from that advanced by modern Egyptologists is certain. The various deities of the Nile Valley were elements of an elaborate magical metaphysical system, a kind of ceremonial Kabbalah. This cannot be denied. But even when impressed with the reality of this fact, the modern Egyptologist still balks. Supposing, he asks, that the Egyptians did possess an elaborate metaphysical doctrine, of what value is its rediscovery in an age when the natural has been demonstrated to be mediocre and the supernatural non-existent? Even if these extinct persons whose mummies clutter up our museums were the custodians of some mysterious lore, we have simply outgrown it. Let the dead past bury its dead, they say. We prefer to live in an era of enlightenment, an enlightenment which you would blight by asking us to espouse the superstitions of our remote ancestors. These so-called superstitions, however, it is interesting to note, die hard. In fact, they do not die at all, but insinuate themselves as a discordant note in our matter-of-fact existences. McCall's magazine published some time ago an article by Edgar Wallace entitled "The Curse of Amun-Ra," dealing with the phenomena attendant upon the opening of the tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. After vividly describing the curse of Amun-Ra, the author sums up the effect of this curse upon those who came in contact with the tomb or its contents. His statements are in substance as follows. At the time the tomb was opened, the party present at the excavations included the Earl of Carnarvon, Howard Carter and his secretary, Dick Bethel, M. Benedict, the French archaeologist, and M. Pasanova. Of these, only one, Howard Carter, remains alive. Now that was at the time of the article. Colonel Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, and Evelyn White, who also entered the tomb, were both dead within a year, one by suicide. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who took an X-ray of the mummy, was also dead within 12 months. And Professor Lafleur of McGill University, the first American scientist to examine the death chamber, did not leave Luxor alive. Wolfe Joel visited the tomb and was dead within a year. Jay Gould was taken ill within the tomb and died. Attendants whose duty it was to look after the exhibit from the tomb in the Cairo Museum also sickened and died. 7 French authors and journalists visited the tomb, and 6 were dead within 2 years. When they unveiled Tutankhamun, they found a mark upon his face, and by a strange coincidence, the mark left upon the face of Lord Carnarvon, which presumably caused his death, was in exactly the same spot and of similar appearance. Nor does this list include the numerous native workmen who perished from the curse. Only recently, another name was added to the long list associated with the tragedy. Arthur Weigall, after a long and mysterious illness, similar to that defined in the curse, is the most recent victim. The eminent authority on antiquities, Dr. Martis, said, quote, "The Egyptians for 7,000 years possessed the secret of surrounding their mummies with some dynamic force of which we have only the faintest idea," unquote. Over the entrance to the tomb of Tutankhamun was a magical tablet inscribed with strange hieroglyphics. Dr. Martis named this tablet the Stela of Malediction, for it pronounced a fearful curse upon any sacrilegious person who might violate the sanctuary of the deified head, and it was called the Stele. The words upon the stela were as follows: "O ye beings from above, O ye beings from below, Phantoms riding the breaths of men, ye of the crossroads and of the great highways, wanderers beneath the shade of night, and ye from the abysses of the west on the fringes of the twilight, dwellers in the caverns of obscurity, who rouse terrors and shuddering, and ye walkers by night, whom I will not name, friends of the moon, and ye intangible inhabitants of the world of night, O people, O denizens of the tombs, all of you approach and be my witnesses and my respondents. Let the hand raised against my form be withered. Let them be destroyed who attack my name, my foundation, my effigies, the images like unto me." Unquote. Can modern Egyptologists and scientists in all branches and departments view lightly the culture of the Egyptians if their researches into the forces of nature gave them such strange power and enabled them to master natural laws of which modern learning has no knowledge or conception? Did you know that Lars Hansen was reared in the Stell Group? Did you know that a very famous talk show host who covers for the Masons all the time was a member? Also was heavily involved with the Communist Party? Did you know these things? Do you ever bother to check, you who listen to these people and believe them blindly? You, the sheeple of the world? Circumstances so extraordinary as the curse of King Tutankhamun simply overtax the theory of mere coincidence, folks. Nor is this an isolated case, as those will remember who read the accounts of the Cleopatra mummy curse many years ago. It will also be noted that in this age of moral certitudes, the story of the Tutankhamun curse had no sooner been broadcast than several of our large museums were deluged by gifts of Egyptian antiquities from private individuals who no longer desired to own them. And these persons, most of them well educated, as modern education goes, were not superstitious. They were just careful. The following article appeared in an English newspaper in 1923. Quote, "The death of Lord Carnarvon has been followed by a panic among collectors of Egyptian antiquities. All over the country, people are sending their treasures to the British Museum, anxious to get rid of them because of the superstition that Lord Carnarvon was killed by the Ka, or double of the soul of Tutankhamun. These fears are, it is hardly necessary to state, absolutely groundless." Unquote. It's also hardly necessary, folks, to add that the journalist fails to give his authority for the last sentence. The newspaper article continues. Quote, "An avalanche of parcels containing mummies, shriveled hands and feet, porcelain and wooden statuettes, and other relics from the ancient tombs descended this week on the British Museum. Fear inspires these gifts, brought by every post. The belief that a dead king's curse is potent for evil after thousands of years won thousands of adherents on the day when Lord Carnarvon became ill. Few of the parcels received at the museum bear the sender's name. The owners, in their eagerness to wash their hands of the accursed things, have tried to keep their identity secret. The British Museum is a godsend to the superstitious. It offers a means of shifting the liability to expert shoulders. The museum authorities are used to such liabilities, having harbored the coffin lid of the powerful priestess of Amun-Ra for years. But they are not at all grateful for the present flood of gifts. The museum weathered a similar storm some years ago, when the story of the curse of the priestess of Amun-Ra became public. Sufficient scare gifts were received to fill a large showcase. A long chain of fatalities has been attributed to the curse of the priestess. Men who have made fun of the superstitious have died within the year. Another story is that a photographer took pictures of the priestess and placed the plates in his safe. When he went to look at them some weeks later, the glass had become a thin brown powder." Unquote. Now let us consider the rational explanations, so-called adduced by science in disposing of the superstition of the king's curse. Dr. Frederick H. Cowles, FRGS, famous British scientist, declared in an interview years ago that Lord Carnarvon and a number of workmen engaged in excavation met their deaths as the result of a poisonous and almost invisible dust placed there purposely by the wily priests to bring destruction upon the violators of the dead. Quote, "This poisonous dust," unquote, says Dr. Coles, quote, "analysis of which has baffled scientists, was scattered about the tomb. Lord Carnarvon was not the only one to note its fatal property, as a number of workmen engaged in the excavation were likewise stricken. Most of these died a lingering death, but others, greatly impaired in health, have recovered," unquote. There is nothing in the learned doctor's explanation, however, to account for the fact that Howard Carter did not chance to breathe any of the noxious vapors, although he was more steadily engaged in the work of excavation than even Lord Carnarvon. It's also questioned how much science actually knows about this mysterious dust which defies analysis, for if it cannot be analyzed, how can it be either identified with certainty or even proved poisonous? The term poisonous dust is evidently the charitable term that covers a multitude of scientific shortcomings. Several years later, there was another revelation that they were stricken with some virus that inhabits ancient tombs. And who knows what the real story is? Though sorcery has been accorded no official recognition by modern science, there is nevertheless a certain quasi-official acceptance of the reality of occult phenomena throughout the civilized world. In a newspaper interview, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle illustrates the widespread recognition of the idea that the Egyptians knew how to surround their dead with mysterious guardian agencies which throughout the centuries visited their vengeance upon grave robbers, scientific or otherwise. In discussing with the correspondent of the Daily Express the death of a certain Mr. Fletcher, who had felt the wrath of Egypt's dead, Conan Doyle declared that the tragedy was caused by Egyptian elementals guarding a female mummy because another student of Egyptology, a Mr. Robinson, had begun an investigation of the stories of the mummy's malevolence. Quote, "I warned Mr. Robinson," he says, "against concerning himself with the mummy at the British Museum. He persisted, and his death followed," unquote. You may wonder where all this is going. But it becomes clear when you understand that the Egyptians inherited the religion of Babylon. So are we to presume that this single phase of ceremonial magic constituted the entire repertoire of the Egyptian thaumaturgists? You see, if they could manifest such surprising power, is it not probable that they possessed a knowledge of other natural hidden forces, forces as yet unknown to the modern public world, which is possibly of inestimable value, which may still be contained within what is called the secrets of the ages, which is guarded by the modern mystery school, which is still the ancient mystery school brought forward through the ages? We are assured in the authorized version, and note I say authorized version of Holy Writ, that the magicians of Egypt changed their staves or rods into serpents in the presence of Pharaoh. The modern scientist does not live who can duplicate that phenomena, yet if he happens to be a good Christian, he is in somewhat of a dilemma. We can pass over all the desperate efforts to disprove the magical powers of the Egyptians as arising not from a mature knowledge, but from a desperate prejudice. You see, magic is too ancient and too universal to be explained away by mirrors, wires, and hinges. In Egypt, we are dealing unquestionably with true manifestations of occult power. The learned author of Art Magic presents what may be accepted as a reasonable, accurate estimation of the priest-magicians of the old Egyptian mysteries. Quote, They were highly educated, scientific men. They understood the nature of the lodestone, the virtues of mineral and animal magnetism, which together with the force of psychological impression constituted a large portion of their theurgic practices. They perfectly understood the art of reading the innermost secrets of the soul, of impressing the susceptible imagination by enchantment and fascination, of sending their own spirits forth from the body, which many modern metaphysical teachers claim that they can do, as clairvoyants under the action of powerful will. In fact, they were masters of the art now known as mesmerism, clairvoyance, electrobiology, etc. They also realized the virtues of magnets, gums, herbs, drugs, and fumigations, and employed music to admirable effect. And no one since has been able to perfect or even come close to their art of embalming the dead. The highly gifted Egyptologist Lenormant acknowledges Egyptian magic as an essential part of their religious philosophy. James Bonwick, FRGS, thus summarizes the powers possessed by Egyptian adepts. Quote, Egyptian mystics could levitate, walk the air, handle fire, live underwater, sustain great pressure, harmlessly suffer mutilation, read the past, foretell the future, make themselves invisible, and cure disease. Unquote. Now, I have no idea whether to believe that or not, but that is what this expert says. Now, if you doubt the power of magic wielded by the priests of Mystery Babylon, listen to this. For we can compare James Bonwick's account with some other news from Tibet, another land long famous for magic. Dr. Alexander Cannon, a distinguished scientist, a doctor of medicine, a celebrated psychiatrist, a master of arts, and a fellow of the Royal Geographic Society, brought back a strange record from the land of the Lamas. He claimed he saw a tree withered by a pointed finger, a dead man raised to life, the Grand Lama surrounded by a blue aura 3 inches thick, and a human being lifted into the air by pure mental effort. The London County Council called upon Dr. Cannon to resign his post as the head of a noted institution for his remarks, but later, strangely enough, after further inquiry, withdrew the demand. It would seem, folks, that the age of miracles, or at least magic, is not dead. You know, Plato, and I wrote this in my book, was an initiate of Mystery Babylon, and was actually initiated in the Great Pyramid in Egypt, where he lay in the sarcophagus for 3 days and 3 nights. He entered as a mortal man, and according to his writings, emerged as a god, given or imparted knowledge which he was to guard and keep. Remember, they called themselves the guardians of the secrets of the ages. From the writings of Proclus and Iamblichus, we can gain a considerable insight into the principles of Egyptian magic. To the old philosophers, even Pythagoras and Plato, magic was no mystery. According to Proclus, the initiated priests so fully understood the mutual sympathy between the visible and invisible worlds that they were able to change the course of action and focus divine virtues upon inferior natures. And according to Plato, the highest form of magic consisted in the divine worship of the gods, plural, and according to Iamblichus, the priests, through sacerdotal theurgy, were able to ascend from a material state of unconsciousness to a realization of the universal essence, thus coming to an understanding of universal purpose, by which the performance of high feats of magic became possible. Thousands of years later, Aleister Crowley claimed the same thing. Now this is significant. It's proper at this point to establish a clear line of demarcation between magic and sorcery. You see, the term magic was not associated with occult jugglery by the Egyptians, but arose from a profound understanding of natural law. Magic, said General Albert Pike, and you will be hearing an awful lot of General Albert Pike during this series of shows. Magic, says General Albert Pike, is the exact and absolute science of nature and its laws. Unquote. From the knowledge of this absolute science arises occult science. Occult merely means hidden, folks. From experience in occult science, in turn, arises the theurgic art. For as surely as man has adapted his physical universe to his purposes, so surely the adept of the mystery school adapts the metaphysical universe to his purposes. To acknowledge that the Egyptians possessed the power of adapting mystical forces to physical ends is to bestow upon them proficiency in the most perfect and difficult of the arts, according to the mystery religion of Babylon. Yet to deny this ability on the part of the Egyptian priests is to deny the evident, and we must resign ourselves to the undeniable fact that they possessed a form of learning which has not been conferred upon this present race, at least publicly. Men like Aleister Crowley have proven that it has been passed down through the ages and is kept and practiced secretly by those who call themselves the guardians of the secrets of the ages. Now, folks, we are in desperate need of money to help pay for airtime. If you like this show, if you want it to stay on the air, then please reach down in your pockets, contribute the most that you can possibly afford. Make your checks out to WWCR, not to me. This is going straight to the radio station to pay for airtime. Not one single penny of it goes in my pocket, or anybody else's for that matter. It goes to the radio station. Make them out to WWCR. If you would like a list of tapes or available materials, or would like an information packet, or learn how to join CAGI, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, then send your checks, your donations made out to WWCR, and your request for information to P.O. Box 889, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. That's P.O. Box 889, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. Or you can just call Stan and ask him to send you a packet of information. He'll also tell you the price of tapes, whether you're a CAGI member or not. The price is different depending upon that. Call Stan at 602-567-6109. That's 602-567-6109.